Now let's begin. The morning sun cut through the blinds of Patrick Sosa's downtown office, illuminating the architectural blueprints spread across his desk. At 34, he'd built his reputation as one of the city's most innovative structural engineers, the kind of mind that could look at a crumbling foundation and see possibility where others saw demolition. That same analytical approach had saved him more times than he could count, but never in ways he'd expected. His phone buzzed. A text from Andrea, his wife of 7 years. Mom wants to keep Maya for the weekend. She misses her. Patrick stared at the message, his jaw tightening. Maya was 5 years old, brilliant and curious, with his dark eyes and her mother's smile. For the past 6 months, Andrea's mother Geraldine Elliott had been inserting herself into their lives with increasing aggression, always under the guise of helping. Patrick had watched his marriage slowly poison under her influence. He typed back, "We discussed this. Maya comes home tonight. I promised her we'd work on her treehouse." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, "You're being controlling again." Patrick set down his phone and returned to his work, but concentration eluded him. The Elliott family had money, old money from pharmaceutical patents that had made Geraldine's late father a fortune. When Patrick had married Andrea, a pediatric nurse he'd met at a charity hospital fundraiser, he'd been enchanted by her kindness and independence. He hadn't counted on Geraldine, a woman who treated her daughter like property and him like a temporary inconvenience. The problems had started small. Comments about his background. His father had been a construction worker, his mother a school teacher. They'd given Patrick everything, including the scholarships and determination that put him through MIT. But to Geraldine, he was blue-collar pretending to be white-collar. She'd said it to his face at their rehearsal dinner, laughing like it was a joke. Then came the real erosion. Geraldine would call Andrea daily, sometimes 3 or 4 times, always with crises that needed immediate attention. She'd had Andrea's name added to bank accounts, then slowly convinced her to transfer money for investments Patrick never saw documented. When he'd questioned it, Andrea had accused him of being jealous of her family's wealth. The worst part was watching Andrea change. The woman who'd once stood up to hospital administrators on behalf of her patients now couldn't say no to her mother. Geraldine had convinced her to quit work, saying she should focus on being a proper mother. Patrick had supported it initially, but it had become a leash. Without her own income, Andrea had grown more dependent on her mother's money and approval. His phone rang. Nicholas Dunlap, his best friend since college and an attorney specializing in family law. "Patrick, I finished reviewing those documents you sent," Nicholas said without preamble. "The financial records show a pattern. Your wife has transferred over $200,000 to her mother's accounts in the past 18 months. Patrick's hand tightened on the phone. "Can we prove it's not legitimate?" "The burden of proof is on us. But yeah, there's no documentation, no investment receipts, nothing. It looks like straight transfers. Combined with the other stuff you've told me about Geraldine's behavior, we might have a case for financial manipulation if it comes to divorce." "I don't want divorce," Patrick said quietly. "I want my wife back, and I want my daughter protected from that woman's influence." Nicholas sighed. "I know, brother. But you need to prepare for the possibility. Document everything. Every interaction, every text, every instance of Geraldine interfering in your marriage." After hanging up, Patrick pulled up the folder on his computer where he'd been keeping records. Screenshots of texts, emails, even recordings from a particularly heated argument where Geraldine had told Andrea she'd made a mistake marrying beneath her station. He'd started documenting 6 months ago when he'd realized his marriage might not survive Geraldine's campaign. That evening, Patrick drove to the Elliott estate, a sprawling property in the suburbs that always made him feel like he was approaching a fortress. The iron gates were open, and he pulled up the circular driveway, noting Geraldine's Mercedes and Andrea's BMW. His daughter's car seat should have been visible in the BMW. It wasn't. He rang the doorbell. Geraldine answered, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing pearls at 6 p.m. like she was expecting the governor. "Patrick," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We weren't expecting you. I'm here for Maya. Andrea said you wanted her for the weekend, but we had plans. Andrea's resting. She's had a headache all day." Geraldine didn't move from the doorway. "Then I'll take Maya home and let Andrea rest." "That won't be possible." Patrick felt his pulse quicken. "Where's my daughter, Geraldine?" The older woman's smile widened slightly, and Patrick saw something in her eyes that made his blood chill. Triumph. Maya is somewhere safe. Somewhere she can be properly cared for, without the stress of your unstable household. What the hell are you talking about? Patrick stepped forward, but Geraldine held her ground. Andrea and I have discussed this at length. You've been working too much, leaving her alone, putting pressure on the family. Maya needs stability. Where is she? Patrick's voice was deadly calm now, the tone that made subordinates on construction sites stop what they were doing. I think you should leave, Patrick. If you cause a scene, I'll call the police and tell them you're being threatening. Patrick pulled out his phone, dialing Andrea. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Andrea won't be taking your calls right now. She needs space to think about what's best for Maya. Patrick called 911. The dispatcher answered, and he explained the situation as calmly as he could. His daughter was supposed to be at his mother-in-law's house. She wasn't there. He didn't know where she was. His wife wasn't answering. Geraldine's expression flickered, the first sign of genuine concern. Within 20 minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Patrick explained the situation while Geraldine insisted there was a misunderstanding, that arrangements had been made, that Patrick was being hysterical. Where is the child? Officer Randolph Sellers asked, his notepad out. With relatives, Geraldine said smoothly. Perfectly safe. This is a domestic matter that doesn't require police involvement. Which relatives? Where? Patrick demanded. Geraldine smiled. That's family business. Officer Sellers looked between them. Ma'am, if the father is requesting to know his child's whereabouts and you're refusing to provide that information, we have a problem. I'm not refusing anything. I'm protecting my granddaughter from an unstable situation. That's a lie, Patrick said flatly. Officer, my wife and I have joint custody. No one has the right to take my daughter without my knowledge. Andrea appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale. Patrick, what's going on? Where's Maya? He asked, his voice strained. Andrea descended slowly, avoiding his eyes. She's with Aunt Wanda. Just for a few days while we figure things out. Wanda Powers? Your mother's sister in Nevada? Patrick's mind raced. You took our daughter across state lines without telling me? I didn't take her anywhere. Mom arranged it. When? This morning. Patrick turned to the officers. My daughter was transported out of state this morning without my knowledge or consent. I want to file a report. Officer Sellers exchanged a look with his partner. Sir, if both parents have custody and one parent consented. I didn't consent. I wasn't informed. They deliberately hid this from me. Geraldine's voice was ice. We're protecting Maya from your increasingly erratic behavior. Andrea has been documenting it. Documenting what? Patrick demanded, but Andrea wouldn't meet his eyes. The officers took statements, but Patrick could see this wasn't going to be resolved tonight. After they left, he stood in the driveway facing Andrea, Geraldine watching from the doorway like a sentinel. Why? He asked his wife. Andrea's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Mom's trying to help. Help? She took our daughter to another state. Just for a few days. To give us space. Us? Or you and your mother space to make decisions about my child without me. Andrea flinched. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Patrick drove home in a fog of rage and fear. Once there, he called Nicholas, explained everything, then made another call to a private investigator he'd worked with on a fraud case involving a construction supplier. Derek Lamb answered on the second ring. I need you to find my daughter, Patrick said. And I need documentation of everything. Who moved her? How? Why? Everything. I'll start tonight, Derek replied. Patrick didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table, Maya's drawings covering the refrigerator, her small shoes by the door, and planned. He pulled up every legal resource Nicholas had sent him, researched parental kidnapping laws, and began building a timeline of Geraldine's interference in his marriage. By sunrise, he had a file folder 3 inches thick, and he had a growing certainty that this wasn't about giving anyone space. This was something much worse. The next morning, Patrick received a call from Derek. Found her. She's at Wanda Powers' residence in Henderson, Nevada. I've got surveillance photos confirming your daughter is there. But Patrick, there's something else. What? Wanda Powers works for a private therapeutic boarding school. The kind wealthy families use when they want to reprogram difficult children. I did some digging. Geraldine Elliott sits on their board of directors. Patrick's blood turned to ice. They're going to put her in a school? Can't confirm that yet, but the connection is concerning. These places, some of them are legitimate, but others? They're basically legal kidnapping with a therapeutic veneer. Patrick's mind raced through the implications. Maya was 5 years old. Therapeutic boarding schools didn't take kindergartners, unless someone with enough money and influence made special arrangements. He called Nicholas immediately. We need emergency custody orders. Now. I'm already drafting them. Derek sent me his preliminary findings. Patrick, this is bigger than we thought. If they're planning to institutionalize your daughter, we're looking at potential child abuse charges. How long to get in front of a judge? I can get an emergency hearing by tomorrow morning, but we need more evidence. Can Derek get documentation of what Wanda Powers does? Any connection to Geraldine's plans? He's on it. Patrick spent the day coordinating with his legal team while maintaining his composure at work. His senior project manager, Albert Baxter, pulled him aside at lunch. You look like hell, Sosa. Everything okay? Patrick trusted Albert. The man had 20 years in the field and a no-nonsense approach to problem-solving. Family emergency. I might need to take a few days next week. Whatever you need. Family comes first. By evening, Derek had sent a package of documents. Emails between Geraldine and Wanda discussing treatment options for troubled young children. Brochures for a facility called New Horizons Youth Academy that specialized in early intervention for behavioral disorders. And a handwritten note from Geraldine to Wanda. We need to act before Patrick interferes. Andrea's on board, but she's fragile. Once Maya's settled in the program, Andrea will understand it's for the best. Patrick read the note 3 times, his hands shaking. They weren't planning a weekend visit. They were planning to institutionalize his daughter, to convince his wife that Maya needed to be locked away in some facility, to erase him from his child's life. He called Andrea. She answered on the 5th ring. I know what your mother's planning, he said quietly. Silence. Andrea, tell me you're not part of this. Tell me you don't know about New Horizons. Her voice was small. Mom says Maya's been showing signs of attachment issues, that she needs professional help. She's 5 years old. She's perfectly healthy. You're not a doctor, Patrick. Neither is your mother. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? Mom wants what's best for Maya. No, she wants control. She's had it over you for years, and now she wants it over our daughter. Andrea's voice hardened. I'm hanging up now. Don't call again unless you're ready to discuss this rationally. The line went dead. Patrick stood in his empty house, surrounded by evidence of the life he'd built with Andrea, wedding photos on the walls, Maya's artwork, the furniture they'd picked out together. And he realized his wife was gone, lost to her mother's manipulation so completely that she'd participate in something this monstrous. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 7 a.m. Patrick didn't sleep again that night. He refined his timeline, organized his evidence, and made a decision. If Geraldine Elliott wanted war, he'd give her one. But he'd fight with the only weapons that mattered: truth, evidence, and the law. And when he was done, she wouldn't just lose. She'd answer for every crime she'd committed against his family. The judge's name was Nathaniel Bennett, a family court veteran known for his intolerance of parental alienation. Patrick sat in the courthouse with Nicholas, watching the clock tick towards 7 a.m., his daughter 3 states away, and his marriage shattered. But Patrick Sosa hadn't survived MIT's engineering program, hadn't built his reputation on impossible projects, by giving up when things got hard. He looked at the evidence folder, at the timeline he'd constructed, and felt something settle in his chest. Not rage. Not fear. Certainty. Geraldine Elliott had made a fatal mistake. She'd underestimated him. And that mistake was going to cost her everything. Judge Bennett listened to Patrick's petition with an expression carved from granite. Nicholas presented the evidence methodically. Maya's unauthorized transport across state lines. Geraldine's documented plan to institutionalize a healthy 5-year-old. Andrea's cooperation under apparent duress or manipulation. The judge's eyes narrowed as he reviewed Geraldine's note. Where is the child now? Henderson, Nevada, Your Honor, at Wanda Powers' residence, Nicholas replied. And Ms. Powers' connection to the mother-in-law? Sister and business associate. Ms. Powers is employed by New Horizons Youth Academy, where Geraldine Elliott serves on the board. Judge Bennett set down the documents. I'm issuing an emergency custody order. The child is to be returned to Mr. Sosa's care immediately. Furthermore, I'm ordering a welfare check and investigation by Nevada Child Protective Services. He looked at Patrick. Mr. Sosa, I'm granting you temporary sole custody, pending a full hearing. Your wife and her mother are prohibited from contact with a minor child without supervision. Patrick felt something in his chest release. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. This is preliminary. The full hearing will determine permanent arrangements. But Mr. Sosa? The judge's expression was fierce. If even half of what's alleged here is true, someone's going to jail. Within 6 hours, Patrick was on a flight to Las Vegas, renting a car for the drive to Henderson. Derek had provided Wanda Power's exact address, and Nevada CPS was already on site when Patrick arrived with a local police escort and copies of Judge Bennett's order. The house was a modest suburban home, nothing like the Elliott estate. Wanda Powers answered the door, her resemblance to Geraldine striking. The same cold eyes, the same practiced smile. Mr. Sosa, this is irregular. Where's my daughter? Patrick held up the court order. I have a custody directive. A CPS worker, a woman named Erica Gill, stepped forward. Ma'am, we need to see the child immediately. Wanda's composure cracked slightly. She's napping. Wake her. What happened next would stay with Patrick forever. Wanda led them upstairs to a bedroom where Maya lay on a bed, dressed in unfamiliar clothes. When she saw Patrick, her face transformed. Daddy! She ran to him, and Patrick scooped her up, feeling her small body shake with sobs. It's okay, baby. I've got you. You're safe. I want to go home, she whispered. They said I had to stay here for a long time. They said you didn't want me anymore. Patrick's vision went red at the edges, but he kept his voice calm. That's a lie, Maya. I will always want you. Always. Erica Gill was documenting everything, her expression growing grimmer. Mr. Sosa, I need to interview your daughter privately. Of course. He waited in the living room while Maya spoke with Erica. Wanda sat rigid on the couch, her phone buzzing repeatedly, undoubtedly Geraldine calling for updates. The police officer stood near the door, hand near his belt, watching Wanda like she might bolt. When Erica emerged 30 minutes later, her face was pale. She gestured Patrick outside. Mr. Sosa, your daughter disclosed some very concerning things. She says she was told she would be staying here permanently, that you had given her away because she was too difficult. She says Ms. Powers and another woman discussed a school where difficult children learn to behave. Did she say anything else? Erica hesitated. She said her grandmother told her that if she didn't go willingly, they would have to make her understand. Mr. Sosa, I'm opening a formal investigation. This isn't just custody interference. This appears to be psychological abuse of a minor. Patrick nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Right now, take your daughter home. I'll be coordinating with your local CPS and the police. Keep detailed records of everything she tells you, but don't interrogate her. Let her speak naturally. The flight back was surreal. Maya fell asleep in Patrick's arms, exhausted, while he stared out the window and processed everything. His daughter had been told he'd abandoned her. She'd been threatened with institutionalization. And Andrea had known, had participated, because Geraldine had convinced her it was necessary. Back home, Patrick set Maya up in her room with her favorite stuffed animals and nightlight. She clung to him, afraid he'd disappear. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. You're safe now. Where's Mommy? Patrick's heart cracked. Mommy made some mistakes, sweetie. But I'm going to fix everything. Is Grandma Jerry mean? Patrick chose his words carefully. Grandma Jerry did some things that hurt you. She was wrong to do them. Maya nodded solemnly. She scared me, Daddy. She said if I wasn't good, I'd have to go to a place where they make bad kids good. You're not a bad kid. You're perfect exactly as you are. Later, after Maya finally fell into a deep sleep, Patrick sat with Nicholas in his kitchen, reviewing everything. The CPS report will take a few days, but based on what you've told me, we're looking at multiple charges, Nicholas said. Custodial interference, kidnapping, child endangerment, possibly conspiracy to commit child abuse depending on what else comes out. What about Andrea? That's complicated. If she was manipulated, if Geraldine had psychological control over her, prosecutors might offer a deal. But Patrick, you need to prepare for the possibility that Andrea was a willing participant. How do I explain that to Maya? One day at a time, brother. One day at a time. Over the next week, the investigation expanded. Derek's documentation proved invaluable. He'd photographed the emails, recorded conversations, legally, with proper consent from one party in a one-party consent state, and built a timeline that showed premeditation. Then came the bombshell. Erica Gill called with an update. Maya's statements had been corroborated by other evidence. New Horizons Youth Academy had a file on Maya Sosa, opened 2 months prior, with an enrollment date scheduled for the following week. The file contained fabricated psychological evaluations claiming Maya had severe attachment disorder and violent tendencies. Patrick read the evaluations with mounting fury. They described a child who didn't exist, aggressive, uncontrollable, a danger to herself and others. The psychologist who'd signed them was Dr. Eugene Freeman, who turned out to be Geraldine's personal psychiatrist and had never met Maya. That's fraud, Patrick said flatly. Medical fraud, falsifying records. And it gets better, Nicholas replied. The enrollment fee was $50,000, paid from Andrea's account, your joint marital account. Without your knowledge or consent. Patrick thought of all the missing money, the transfers he'd discovered. She's been planning this for months. Longer. I've got bank records going back a year showing payments to Freeman, transfers to New Horizons for consultation fees. Geraldine orchestrated this entire thing, and Andrea either participated willingly or was so deep under her mother's control she couldn't see she was committing crimes. The district attorney's office moved quickly once they reviewed the evidence. Within 2 weeks, formal charges were filed. Against Geraldine Elliott, custodial interference, kidnapping, crossing state lines with a minor without parental consent, child endangerment, conspiracy to commit child abuse, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, wire fraud, the money transfers, attempted unlawful institutionalization of a minor. Against Wanda Powers, custodial interference, child endangerment, conspiracy charges. Against Dr. Eugene Freeman, medical fraud, falsifying medical records, conspiracy to commit child abuse. Andrea was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator pending further investigation. Patrick watched the news coverage from his living room, Maya playing with blocks nearby, oblivious to the storm her grandmother had created. The Elliott family's fall was spectacular. Geraldine's arrest made headlines. The family's pharmaceutical connections suddenly scrutinized. Questions about how much money had been used to facilitate this scheme. Then Andrea called. Patrick, please. I didn't know it would go this far. You signed the checks, he said quietly. You authorized the evaluations. You handed our daughter over to your mother knowing where she was going. Mom said it was therapeutic. She said Maya needed help. Maya is 5 years old and perfectly healthy. What she needed was her mother to protect her, not participate in a conspiracy to have her locked away. I never meant, Andrea's voice broke. I never wanted this. What did you want, Andrea? Silence stretched between them. I want my family back, she finally whispered. Your family? Or your mother's approval? That's not fair. Fair. Patrick's voice remained eerily calm. Our daughter told me her grandmother said I didn't want her anymore. That I'd given her away. Do you have any idea what that did to her? Mom was just trying to make it easier for Maya to adjust. Listen to yourself. Patrick's composure finally cracked. You're still defending her. Even now, with 11 criminal charges, you're still choosing your mother over your child. I'm not. Yes, you are. And that's why I filed for divorce this morning. The line went silent. Patrick, please. We can fix this. I'll get therapy. I'll cut ties with Mom. Whatever you want. It's too late, Andrea. I gave you chances. I begged you to see what your mother was doing to us. You chose her every single time. And when it came down to it, you chose her over our daughter's safety. I'm her mother. Then you should have acted like it. Patrick hung up. Maya looked up from her blocks, her dark eyes worried. Was that Mommy? Yeah, baby. Is she still at Grandma Jerry's? Yes. Maya returned to her blocks. I like it better here with you. Patrick's throat tightened. Me too, sweetheart. The divorce proceedings moved with surprising speed. Andrea contested nothing. Not custody, not the asset division, nothing. Patrick suspected her attorney had told her fighting would only strengthen the criminal case against her. Nevada's investigation had expanded to include her role, and prosecutors were considering charges. Nicholas negotiated a settlement that gave Patrick full custody with Andrea receiving supervised visitation pending the outcome of the criminal trials. The marital assets were divided evenly, but Patrick insisted on documentation of every dollar Andrea had transferred to her mother. Those transfers, totaling over $300,000, were classified as fraudulent and would need to be repaid. Andrea couldn't repay them. She had no job, no income, and her mother's assets were frozen pending the criminal proceedings. She'd have to file for bankruptcy. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for 30 days after filing, expedited due to the criminal cases. Patrick sat in the courtroom with Nicholas, Andrea across the aisle with her attorney, a young woman named Brittany Simon who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Bennett presided again. He reviewed the settlement terms with a critical eye. Mr. Sosa, you're requesting full legal and physical custody with supervised visitation for Ms. Sosa? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Sosa, do you contest this arrangement? Andrea's voice was barely audible. No, Your Honor. Do you understand you're giving up your parental rights to make decisions regarding your daughter's welfare, education, and medical care? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bennett looked at her for a long moment. Ms. Sosa, I've reviewed the criminal case files. I've read your daughter's statements. Do you have anything to say before I finalize this decree? Andrea stood, her hands shaking. I made a terrible mistake. I trusted the wrong person. I thought I was helping my daughter, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. She looked at Patrick, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. Patrick felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a vast emptiness where his love for this woman used to be. Judge Bennett's expression was granite. Ms. Sosa, you participated in a conspiracy to institutionalize your healthy 5-year-old daughter based on fabricated medical records. Your mother orchestrated it, but you enabled it. You signed the checks. You handed over your child. I don't know if you were manipulated or complicit, but the result is the same. You betrayed your daughter's trust and safety. Andrea sobbed openly now. However, the judge continued. You're cooperating with prosecutors and you've not contested this custody arrangement. I'm approving the settlement. Full custody to Mr. Sosa. Ms. Sosa, you'll have supervised visitation for 2 hours every other Saturday, pending reevaluation after the criminal trials conclude. If you're charged and convicted, visitation will be suspended. Thank you, Your Honor, Andrea whispered. Don't thank me. Thank your ex-husband for not asking for complete termination of your parental rights, which he would be justified in requesting. The gavel came down. Patrick Sosa walked out of that courtroom a single father with full custody of his daughter, his marriage of 7 years dissolved in 30 days. Outside, Andrea approached him, her mascara streaked. Patrick, can I see her? Just for a minute. Not today. Please. I just want to tell her I love her. You should have thought about that before you let your mother convince you to send her away. I know I failed her. But she's still my daughter. Patrick studied the woman he'd once loved, trying to find any trace of the person she'd been. You'll have your supervised visits. That's all the court granted, and it's more than you deserve. He walked away, leaving Andrea standing on the courthouse steps, alone. The criminal trials began 3 months later. The prosecution had built an airtight case, with evidence that stunned even veteran court observers. Geraldine Elliott had spent over $500,000 executing her plan to remove Maya from Patrick's life. The money trail showed payments to Dr. Freeman, New Horizons, private investigators she'd hired to build a fake case of Patrick's unfitness, and even a PR firm to manage the narrative if her plan succeeded. Patrick attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery with a notebook, documenting everything. Maya stayed with his parents. His mother, Rosie Sosa, had moved in temporarily to help with childcare while Patrick navigated the legal proceedings. The prosecution called witness after witness. Erica Gill testified about Maya's statement and the psychological harm done to her. Derek Lamb presented his investigation findings. Financial analysts detailed the money transfers. And Dr. Freeman's former assistant, a woman named Grace Rose, provided damning testimony about how Freeman had created Maya's fake psychological profile without ever meeting her. Dr. Freeman said it was a professional courtesy for Mrs. Elliott, Grace testified. He said she was an old friend and her granddaughter needed help. He never questioned whether it was ethical. He just did what she asked. The defense tried to paint Geraldine as a concerned grandmother, but the evidence was overwhelming. The emails showed premeditation, calculation, and a chilling willingness to destroy a child's mental health for control. The moment everyone had been waiting for came on day 8. Geraldine Elliott took the stand. She was poised, defiant, dressed in an elegant navy suit. Her attorney, a high-priced defense lawyer named Marvin Heath, led her through a narrative of concern and good intentions. Mrs. Elliott, why did you believe your granddaughter needed therapeutic intervention? Maya was showing signs of distress. Her father was working excessive hours. Her mother was struggling. I wanted to help. Did you intend to harm your granddaughter? Absolutely not. Everything I did was out of love. Then came cross-examination. The prosecutor, a woman named Kendra Harrison with a reputation for destroying witnesses, approached with a folder. Mrs. Elliott, you've testified you acted out of love for your granddaughter. Is that correct? Yes. Then why did you tell Maya her father didn't want her anymore? Geraldine's composure flickered. I never said that. We have testimony from Maya Sosa, corroborated by Wanda Power's statements, that you told the child her father had given her away. Is Maya lying? She may have misunderstood. She's 5 years old, Mrs. Elliott. Did you or did you not tell her that her father didn't want her? I may have suggested that her father was too busy to care for her properly, which a 5-year-old would interpret as abandonment. Correct, I suppose. Kendra held up documents. These are emails between you and Dr. Freeman discussing Maya's treatment plan. In one email, dated 3 months before you took her to Nevada, you write, "We need to establish a paper trail showing Patrick's unfitness. Once we have Maya in the program, he won't have legal standing to remove her." Mrs. Elliott, does that sound like acting out of love? Geraldine's face hardened. I was protecting my granddaughter from an unsuitable father. Unsuitable how? Mr. Sosa has a successful career, no criminal record, no history of abuse or neglect. What made him unsuitable? He's not from our world. He doesn't understand how to properly raise a child in our family. The courtroom went silent. Patrick felt Nicholas tense beside him. Not from your world, Kendra repeated. You mean because his parents were a construction worker and a teacher? Because he worked his way through MIT instead of inheriting wealth? That's not what You wrote in an email to your sister Wanda. Andrea made a mistake marrying beneath her class. We need to correct it before Maya is too damaged by his influence. Is that love, Mrs. Elliott? Or is it bigotry? Geraldine's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The jury had seen her mask slip, had heard her reveal what this was really about. The testimony continued for another hour, but it was over. Kendra systematically destroyed every claim of good intentions, revealing the conspiracy for what it was, a calculated attempt to steal a child from her father because Geraldine Elliott couldn't accept that her daughter had married someone she considered inferior. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wanda Powers, who'd taken a plea deal, received 5 years probation and a permanent prohibition from working with children. Dr. Freeman was convicted of medical fraud and conspiracy, sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and loss of his medical license. Geraldine Elliott's sentencing came 2 weeks later. Patrick sat in the courtroom again, this time with his parents. His mother squeezed his hand as the judge read the verdict. Mrs. Elliott, you orchestrated a conspiracy that could have permanently damaged a child's psychological well-being. You used your wealth and influence to manipulate systems meant to protect children, turning them into weapons of control. You attempted to institutionalize a healthy 5-year-old based on fabricated evidence because you couldn't accept your son-in-law's background. Judge Bennett, who'd been assigned the criminal case as well, looked at Geraldine with undisguised disgust. You've shown no remorse, no understanding of the harm you've caused. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison on the kidnapping and conspiracy charges, 3 years on the fraud charges, to run consecutively. 11 years total. You'll also pay restitution of $500,000 to Mr. Sosa for the psychological harm inflicted on his daughter, plus all legal fees incurred. Geraldine's face went white. Your Honor, I'm 68 years old. Then you should have considered the consequences before you committed multiple felonies. Bailiff, remand the defendant. Patrick watched as Geraldine Elliott was led away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally shattered, her face crumpling as she realized she'd lost everything. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Patrick gave a brief statement, thanking the prosecutors and the court, then went home to his daughter. Maya was in the backyard with Rosie, working on the treehouse Patrick had finally finished. When she saw him, she ran over, her face bright. Did you win, Daddy? Patrick picked her up, holding her close. Yeah, baby. We won. Is Grandma Jerry going to leave us alone now? She can't hurt us anymore. Good. Maya hugged him fiercely. Can we finish the treehouse? Absolutely. Later, after Maya was asleep, Patrick sat on his porch with Nicholas, 2 beers, and the quiet satisfaction of justice served. 11 years, Nicholas said. She'll be almost 80 when she gets out. If she gets out. Federal prison isn't kind to elderly inmates. Andre is asking for visitation again. She's agreed to supervised visits, therapy, the whole 9 yards. Patrick considered it. Maya should know her mother. But on my terms, my schedule, and only when I'm convinced Andrea's actually changed. Fair enough. Nicholas raised his beer. To you, brother. You fought the good fight. Patrick clinked bottles with him. To Maya, everything I did was for her. She's lucky to have you. Patrick looked through the window at his daughter's sleeping form, visible through her bedroom door. I'm the lucky one. The story could have ended there. Justice served, villain punished, hero vindicated. But life had one more twist in store. 2 months after Geraldine's sentencing, Patrick received a call from Kendra Harrison. Patrick, you need to come to my office. There's something you should see. He arrived to find her with a stack of documents and a grim expression. During the asset forfeiture proceedings, we discovered something interesting. Geraldine Elliott had a trust fund set up for Maya. $2 million, established when Maya was born. Okay. The trust documents specify that the money goes to Maya when she turns 18, but it can be accessed earlier for educational and medical purposes with the trustee's approval. Let me guess. Geraldine was the trustee. But there's a succession clause. If the original trustee is incapacitated or convicted of a crime, trusteeship passes to the child's guardian. Kendra slid the documents across. That's you, Patrick. Patrick stared at the numbers. $2 million. Enough to pay for Maya's entire education, to secure her future, to undo some of the financial damage Geraldine had done to his marriage. There's more, Kendra said. The trust was funded with money from Geraldine's father's pharmaceutical patents. The same patents the Elliott family claims as their main source of wealth. I've been digging, and it turns out those patents have some questionable history, possible antitrust violations, price-fixing schemes from the 1980s. Are you saying the Elliott fortune is dirty money? I'm saying it's complicated. But the trust is clean, it was established legally, and the money is Maya's. You can accept it and use it for her benefit. Patrick thought about it for all of 30 seconds. Set it up. Every penny goes to Maya's education and future. I don't want to touch it for anything else. Already done. I figured you'd say that. Months passed. Maya started 1st grade, made friends, joined soccer and art classes. She saw Andrea every other Saturday, supervised visits that gradually became less awkward. Andrea was in therapy, working as a nurse again, trying to rebuild her life. She'd cooperate with prosecutors, testifying against her mother, and had avoided criminal charges herself. Patrick watched his daughter flourish, free from Geraldine's poisonous influence, and felt the last pieces of his anger fade. He'd won everything that mattered, his daughter's safety, her future, her happiness. One evening, Maya asked the question Patrick had been dreading. Daddy, why did Grandma Jerry try to send me away? They were working on the treehouse, the late afternoon sun warm on their faces. Patrick set down his hammer and sat beside her. Sometimes people get so focused on what they think is right that they forget to think about what's actually best for the people they love. Grandma Jerry thought she knew what was best for you, but she was wrong. Was she mean because she didn't like you? Patrick chose his words carefully. Grandma Jerry had some ideas about how people should live that weren't very nice. She thought some people were better than others because of where they came from or how much money they had. And when your mom married me, Grandma didn't like it. That's dumb. You're the best dad ever. Patrick's throat tightened. Thanks, baby. Will I have to see her when she gets out of jail? Not if you don't want to. And that won't be for a long time. Maya nodded, satisfied, and returned to hammering nails into wood. Patrick watched her, this resilient, brilliant little girl who'd survived trauma and come out stronger. His phone buzzed. A text from Nicholas, appeal denied. Geraldine's sentence upheld. It's really over. Patrick typed back, thanks for everything. You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork. Patrick pocketed his phone and helped Maya finish the treehouse railing. When they were done, she climbed inside and looked out over the backyard, her face alight with joy. This is the best treehouse in the world, Daddy. You helped build it. That makes it special. Can I sleep up here tonight? Let's wait until you're a little older. Okay. Can we have dinner up here? Absolutely. That night, Patrick and Maya ate sandwiches in the treehouse while the sun set, painting the sky orange and gold. Maya chattered about her day, about her friends, about the art project she was working on. Normal, healthy, happy. Patrick listened, asked questions, laughed at her jokes, and felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He'd lost his marriage, spent hundreds of thousands on legal fees, endured months of stress and fear. But he'd saved his daughter. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. Geraldine Elliott had tried to use her wealth, influence, and manipulation to destroy his family. She'd underestimated him at every turn, his intelligence, his determination, his love for his daughter. And that underestimation had cost her everything. Her freedom, her reputation, her family, her future. Patrick Sosa had fought the good fight. He'd used the law, evidence, and truth as his weapons. He'd been patient when he wanted to rage, strategic when he wanted to lash out, and relentless when others would have given up. And he'd won. Not because he was powerful or wealthy or connected, but because he was a father who loved his daughter more than anything else in the world. And in the end, that love had been stronger than all of Geraldine Elliott's money and schemes. Maya fell asleep in the treehouse, her head on Patrick's shoulder. He carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and stood in her doorway watching her breathe, this precious girl who'd been through hell and came out smiling. Tomorrow he'd go back to work, to building structures that would last generations. But tonight, he'd built something more important, a life where his daughter was safe, loved, and free. And that was enough.